For years, Toni Braxton looked like the strong one in the family. The sister who stayed calm, kept the peace, and carried everyone on her back without complaining. But now, fans are starting to believe that silence may have been hiding years of frustration, pressure, and emotional exhaustion. Because according to growing rumors and resurfaced interviews, Toni has allegedly reached a breaking point with her own mother, Evelyn Braxton, and insiders claim things behind the scenes have become colder than ever. What shocked fans the most wasn't just the reported distance between them. It was the suggestion that Toni no longer wants to keep playing the role of family savior after decades of sacrifice. And once old clips, emotional confessions, and painful family moments started resurfacing online, people began looking at the Braxton family very differently. Now everyone is asking the same uncomfortable question. Did years of hidden resentment finally explode behind closed doors? The Braxton family has always looked complicated from the outside, but lately fans have been paying much closer attention to the emotional cracks that have existed for years beneath the surface. And at the center of those conversations is Toni Braxton, the sister many people believe carried responsibilities far bigger than anyone fully realized. For a long time, Toni rarely spoke openly about how heavy that pressure felt. She would smile during interviews, joke with her sisters, and try to keep things moving even when the tension was obvious. But every now and then, small comments slipped through that hinted at something much deeper going on behind closed doors. People started revisiting old episodes of Braxton family values and noticing moments that felt completely different watching them now. Back then, some viewers saw ordinary family arguments. But today, many believe those scenes revealed years of emotional exhaustion building quietly inside Toni. There were moments where her sisters argued loudly while Toni just sat silently staring into space, almost like she had mentally checked out long before the cameras arrived. Fans now say it looked less like peacekeeping and more like someone trying desperately not to fall apart publicly. What really intensified the conversation was Toni repeatedly admitting she felt responsible for everyone around her. She spoke several times about feeling like she could never fully live her own life because the needs of her family always came first. And while family loyalty is something many people admire, supporters began asking an uncomfortable question. At what point does support stop feeling voluntary and start becoming emotional pressure? According to longtime viewers, that pressure appeared to trace back heavily to Evelyn Braxton. Evelyn often came across as loving, outspoken, and deeply protective of her daughters, but critics say there were also moments where her influence felt overwhelming. Some viewers felt she placed emotional expectations on the girls that became difficult to escape, especially after her painful divorce from Michael Braxton years ago. Evelyn openly discussed the betrayal she experienced during that marriage, and nobody denies how devastating that situation must have been. Allegedly, the emotional scars from that relationship shaped the entire family dynamic moving forward. As those old interviews resurfaced online, people began focusing on how often loyalty seemed tied directly to choosing Evelyn's side. There were reports that maintaining a relationship with both parents equally became difficult after the divorce. Fans especially pointed to moments involving Tracy Braxton, who sometimes appeared closer to her father than the others. According to online discussions, the reactions surrounding those situations spoke volumes without anyone needing to say much directly. The atmosphere allegedly became one where disagreement felt dangerous emotionally. For Toni, many believe that created years of internal conflict. On one hand, she deeply loved her mother and wanted to protect her. On the other hand, she also seemed emotionally drained by constantly carrying everybody else's pain while suppressing her own feelings. That balancing act appeared exhausting, especially as her music career exploded and financial expectations grew heavier. Toni's success changed the entire family circumstances, but fans now argue it also created silent obligations nobody fully acknowledged publicly. Once she became the breakout star, it allegedly stopped being only about her dreams. Suddenly, there were expectations to help open doors for siblings, provide support financially, and keep everyone stable emotionally. While Toni rarely complained openly, she did admit several times that the responsibility felt crushing. In one emotional moment, she even confessed that if her family were not related to her, they probably would not be friends. That statement shocked viewers because it sounded far more painful than people expected from someone known for staying diplomatic. At the same time, Toni was battling her own personal struggles, quietly. Financial problems, public pressure, health complications, and lupus all became part of her reality while she still tried maintaining the image of being the dependable one. Some sources have speculated that years of stress may have contributed to the toll on her health, though nobody can say that with certainty. Still, many fans believe the emotional burden she carried clearly affected her mentally and physically over time. What made the situation even sadder for supporters was the feeling that whenever Toni tried expressing frustration, the focus somehow shifted back onto everyone else's feelings instead of hers. Viewers noticed moments where her emotional exhaustion was acknowledged briefly before conversations quickly returned to family expectations. Critics now argue that Toni spent years being treated less like an individual and more like the emotional foundation holding the entire family together. And recently, rumors claiming Toni has allegedly reduced communication with Evelyn outside of filming situations only fueled speculation further. Neither side has fully confirmed the extent of any fallout, but fans believe the emotional distance has become impossible to ignore. The warmth that once seemed natural between them now appears strained during public appearances, interviews, and family discussions. That sudden shift is exactly why people believe something major may have finally changed behind the scenes after decades of silence. As more fans revisited old interviews and reality show clips, the tension between Toni Braxton and Evelyn Braxton started looking less like ordinary family conflict and more like years of unresolved emotional pressure finally surfacing in public. And honestly, some of the hardest moments to watch were the ones where Toni tried explaining how trapped she felt while everyone around her seemed too overwhelmed to fully hear what she was saying. There were scenes where she admitted she felt like she never had permission to truly soar because the weight of her family responsibilities always pulled her back down. At the time, some people thought she was simply venting. But now, those comments feel much more serious. One thing that keeps coming up online is the idea that Toni became the emotional provider long before anyone realized the damage that role could cause. Fans believe that after her music career exploded in the 1990s, the family dynamic shifted permanently. Toni was no longer just the oldest sister with the beautiful voice. She became the safety net. And once someone becomes that person inside a family, the pressure can quietly become endless. Every crisis somehow circles back to them. Every financial issue becomes their concern. Every emotional breakdown lands on their shoulders. What made things more complicated was the fact that Toni herself was struggling privately while still trying to support everyone else publicly. Her bankruptcy filings shocked the world because from the outside, she looked untouchable. She had Grammy Awards, hit records, sold-out tours, and global fame. But behind that glamorous image were reportedly terrible contracts, overwhelming debt, health complications, and constant stress. Many supporters now question how much emotional energy she had left after trying to survive all of that while also being expected to stabilize an entire family emotionally. Then there was Evelyn's role in everything. Critics online began pointing out moments where Evelyn's words toward her daughters felt emotionally loaded rather than supportive. Some viewers believe her unresolved hurt from Michael Braxton's betrayal created an environment where guilt, loyalty, and obligation became deeply connected inside the household. Evelyn often spoke passionately about the pain she endured during her marriage, and people sympathized with her heartbreak. But others began asking whether that pain unintentionally shaped the emotional atmosphere her daughters grew up inside. Fans especially noticed how often Toni seemed afraid of disappointing her mother. Even as a grown woman with massive success, she still appeared careful with her words around Evelyn, almost like she was trying to avoid triggering conflict. Some viewers described it as emotional walking on eggshells. Others felt Toni looked exhausted trying to keep peace between everyone while never fully expressing her own frustrations honestly. The situation became even heavier after Tracy Braxton's passing in 2022. Tracy was often seen as one of the emotional bridges inside the family, someone who brought humor and softness during tense moments. After her death, fans noticed the remaining sisters seemed even more emotionally fractured than before, and many believe that grief intensified existing issues rather than healing them. Old resentments allegedly resurfaced quickly, especially regarding family loyalty, unresolved arguments, and long-standing emotional wounds nobody truly addressed. At the same time, Evelyn's decision to work on a memoir reportedly added fresh tension behind the scenes. According to rumors circulating online, some family members worried about private history being reopened publicly. Others allegedly felt certain narratives were being controlled unfairly. While details remain unclear, viewers noticed subtle changes during interviews and appearances afterward. Toni in particular appeared more distant, more guarded, and less willing to participate emotionally the way she once did. One emotional confession from Toni that resurfaced online really struck fans deeply. She admitted feeling angry at everybody in her family and confessed that if they were not related, she likely would not choose them as friends. That statement spread rapidly because it sounded less like temporary frustration and more like decades of emotional exhaustion finally slipping out. People who had spent years defending the family dynamic suddenly started reevaluating everything. Supporters argue that Toni sacrificed enormous parts of her personal happiness trying to maintain stability for others. They point to how often her own needs seemed pushed aside while she focused on keeping everyone financially and emotionally afloat. Some even believe her quiet personality was misunderstood for years. Instead of naturally being reserved, fans now wonder whether she simply learned early that expressing frustration created more pressure than relief. Meanwhile, conversations online about Evelyn became increasingly divided. Some people strongly defend her, arguing she survived betrayal, heartbreak, and the pressure of raising a talented family under difficult circumstances. Others feel her pain may have unintentionally created emotional patterns that deeply affected her daughters well into adulthood. And because the Braxtons built such a large part of their brand around family closeness, watching these emotional fractures become visible has been uncomfortable for longtime fans. Now rumors continue spreading that Toni has allegedly created stronger boundaries than ever before, especially with Evelyn. Reports claim communication between them has become limited outside of professional obligations or filming situations. Whether those rumors are completely accurate remains uncertain, but viewers insist the emotional shift feels visible. The closeness that once looked automatic now seems replaced by caution, distance, and unresolved tension sitting quietly beneath every interaction. And the saddest part is that many fans no longer believe the situation can simply be fixed with another family dinner or emotional apology on camera. For years, fans watched Toni Braxton play the role of the strong one. No matter how chaotic things became inside the Braxton family, she somehow kept showing up with a calm face, a polished smile, and enough grace to convince the public everything was still holding together behind the scenes. But now, people are starting to believe that image was hiding something much heavier. Because according to growing speculation online, Toni has quietly pulled away from her own mother, Evelyn Braxton, and insiders claim the tension between them has become impossible to ignore. What shocked fans most is that this situation allegedly did not explode over one single argument. It reportedly came from decades of pressure, resentment, sacrifice, and emotional exhaustion that had been building underneath the surface for years. And once old interviews started resurfacing online, viewers suddenly began noticing details they completely missed before. Moments that once looked normal now feel uncomfortable, layered, and painfully revealing. One thing that keeps coming up in conversations about the Braxton family is how much responsibility seemed to fall directly onto Toni's shoulders from the very beginning. Long before reality television cameras entered their lives, she was already carrying the weight of becoming the family's breakout star. Once her music career exploded, people naturally assumed success solved everything. Platinum records, sold-out tours, awards, and international fame made it look like she had finally escaped struggle altogether. But according to stories shared over the years, that success may have actually created a completely different kind of pressure behind closed doors. Because once Toni became the one bringing in major money and opportunities, expectations reportedly shifted inside the family dynamic. Fans now believe she stopped being treated simply as a daughter or sister and slowly became viewed as the person responsible for holding everyone else together emotionally and financially. That pressure became even more noticeable during episodes of Braxton Family Values, where Toni repeatedly hinted that she felt emotionally trapped by family obligations. She often spoke carefully, almost like someone trying not to say too much while still quietly asking for understanding. Looking back now, many viewers think those moments were far more serious than they first appeared. There were scenes where her exhaustion practically leaked through the screen, especially whenever conversations turned toward responsibility, loyalty, or sacrifice. Even when arguments erupted between the sisters, Toni usually positioned herself as the peacemaker instead of openly expressing frustration. But people online are now asking an important question. What happens when the person keeping the peace secretly feels unsupported themselves? The conversation became even more emotional once older comments about Evelyn Braxton's marriage to Michael Braxton resurfaced online. Evelyn has openly discussed the pain she experienced during that relationship and how betrayal deeply affected her life. Nobody disputes that those experiences left emotional scars. However, critics now argue that unresolved pain may have shaped the emotional environment surrounding the entire family afterward. According to some longtime viewers, the atmosphere inside the household allegedly became centered around loyalty, emotional alignment, and choosing sides. And when children grow up inside that kind of emotional pressure, it can follow them well into adulthood. Fans especially began reanalyzing moments involving Toni and her father. There were subtle interactions where she seemed hesitant, guarded, or nervous about upsetting one parent by showing affection toward the other. Some people believe the sisters learned very early that keeping peace sometimes meant suppressing their own feelings. And over time, that emotional balancing act may have become exhausting. Several viewers even pointed toward how Tracy Braxton often appeared isolated within certain family conversations, especially when disagreements involving loyalty surfaced. The pattern led fans to wonder whether emotional tension inside the household was far deeper than what cameras fully revealed. At the same time, Toni's financial struggles added another painful layer to the story. Despite massive career success, she publicly dealt with bankruptcy more than once, leaving many fans confused about how a superstar with such enormous achievements could still face financial collapse. Industry contracts reportedly played a role, but supporters also believe years of helping family members and carrying additional responsibilities may have contributed to that pressure. According to discussions online, Toni allegedly felt obligated to keep supporting everyone around her regardless of what she personally needed. And eventually, people say that kind of emotional and financial burden can completely drain a person. What truly shifted public opinion recently were Toni's own comments about feeling unable to fully live for herself. In several interviews over the years, she hinted that she sometimes wondered how different her life could have been if she were free from constantly prioritizing everyone else first. Those statements hit differently now because fans believe they reveal someone quietly battling resentment while still trying to remain loyal to her family image. And when reports started circulating that Toni had allegedly reduced communication with Evelyn outside of filming situations, viewers immediately connected the dots. Now social media is filled with debates about whether Toni is finally setting boundaries after decades of emotional exhaustion. Some people strongly sympathize with Evelyn, arguing she simply did the best she could after surviving heartbreak and instability. Others believe Toni spent most of her adult life carrying emotional responsibilities she never truly chose for herself. Either way, fans agree on one thing. The tension inside the Braxton family no longer feels like ordinary reality television drama. It feels deeply personal, unresolved, and years in the making. And if Toni really has reached the point where she is emotionally stepping away from the role she carried for so long, then this may be one of the biggest turning points the Braxton family has ever faced publicly. After hearing all of this, it really makes you look at the Braxton family in a completely different way. For years, fans watched the love, the arguments, the laughter, and the emotional breakdowns play out on television, but now people are wondering how much pain was quietly sitting underneath those moments the entire time. Do you think Toni Braxton was carrying too much responsibility for too many years? Or do you feel Evelyn Braxton was simply doing the best she could after everything she went through? And do you believe family loyalty can sometimes become emotional pressure without people even realizing it? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is definitely deeper than celebrity gossip at this point. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications because there are still more shocking details, hidden tensions, and celebrity family stories we need to talk about next.